Clara Moreno's first night at a Shridge General felt like slipping into a place time had tried to forget. The hospital loomed over the city's edge like a relic, its stone fog cracked, its windows blank-eyed. Inside it was even worse. The halls were too quiet, the overhead lights flickered in spasms, and the wallpaper near the east wing curled like parchment. Still, Clara, a seasoned but recently displaced nurse, had seen enough of the medical world to ignore the setting. She met the charge nurse, signed in at 11:46 p.m., and was handed a faded clipboard. Her rounds would cover 3 wards, including the long-term care wing and post-surgical recovery. The others whispered about avoiding room 304. Just a quirk with the wiring, they said. But Clara could hear the shift in tone. Just after midnight, while checking IVs on the second floor, she heard the unmistakable ding of a call bell. She followed the sound to room 112. The door creaked open easily, though the lights inside didn't work. No patient. Just an empty bed, old heart monitor unplugged, and a thick layer of dust on the windowsill. She made a note and turned back, only to catch movement in the mirror of the medicine cabinet. A dark shape, human height, gone by the time she spun around. Shaken, she returned to the nurse's station. Mrs. Carmichael, an elderly patient, was sitting up, whispering to someone. Clara gently approached. "Talking to someone, Mrs. Carmichael?" The woman nodded solemnly, her clouded eyes locked on a dark corner of the room. "She visits when the floors creak." "Has for years." Later in the supply closet, Clara found an odd item tucked behind extra linens, an old brass key tied with a faded patient band. The name on the band was smudged, but the tag on the key was clear: B3 access. Curious, she asked a senior nurse about it. The woman's expression turned flat. "Old storage, sealed. No one uses B3. But when Clara returned to her rounds, the elevator doors opened unprompted. Inside, the button for B3 glowed faintly, though there was no B3 on the directory. As her shift wound down, she jotted notes in her log. Strange noises. False call bells. Empty rooms acting occupied. But one thing stuck with her most. The temperature drop outside room 304. A thermometer left on a tray there read 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Every other hallway was 72. The next morning, as she signed out, the receptionist paused and looked at her. "First night?" Clara nodded. The receptionist just offered a tight smile. "Don't let the walls talk too loud." Clara stepped out into the rising sun, rubbing the brass key in her pocket. Her gut told her she hadn't just walked into a hospital. She'd walked into something waiting to wake up. Clara couldn't stop thinking about the key. B3 access. It had weight, not just physical, but something heavier, like whatever it unlocked had been sealed for a reason. She hadn't told anyone. Not the other nurses, not even Jacob, the janitor she'd met briefly on her first night. Something told her this wasn't a topic people discussed openly. Her second night began with the same flickering lights and whispered gossip. A patient claimed someone visited him in the night. Another said a child's voice sang near the stairwell. Clara chalked it up to stress and painkillers. But when the elevator dinged open on its own, no one inside, no button pressed, she hesitated. The button marked B3 glowed dimly. She stepped in. It was a quiet descent, the air growing colder as the numbers ticked down. When the elevator shuddered to a halt, the doors opened onto a narrow, dark corridor. The lights flickered. Dust floated like static in the air. The hallway was lined with sealed morgue doors, each marked in peeling paint with a single number. Clara stepped forward, her breath visible. It smelled like old metal, formaldehyde, and something older. Something sour. Then the crying started. A soft whimper, unmistakably human, echoed from the far end of the corridor. Clara followed, passing old gurneys and torn curtains until she reached a small waiting area. Children's chairs. A mural, half destroyed, of animals smiling under a sun. She turned, and there he was. "Jacob. You weren't supposed to come alone." Clara exhaled, half startled, half relieved. "You know about this place?" He nodded. "I've worked here 42 years. never touched B3. Not once. But it touches everything else. Sometimes you hear it upstairs. Sometimes you don't. Why is it open? She asked. It never really closed. He stepped forward, pointing to the farthest morgue door, number 9. That's the one. The others are cold. That one's warm. Clara approached cautiously. The door's handle was rusted but clean, as though recently used. The moment she touched it, the lights above her dimmed, then surged. The hallway groaned. A sudden voice, a whisper, right behind her ear. Help me. She spun around. Empty. Don't stay, Jacob said. B3 remembers. And it likes when people come back. As they rode the elevator back up, Clara clutched the key tighter. She wasn't sure what she'd felt down there. Cold, grief, maybe fear. But one thing was certain. The hospital wasn't just haunted. It was alive. And it was watching her. It started at 3:33 a.m. again. Clara stood at the edge of room 219's doorway, heart pounding as the monitor let out a single thin beep, then flatlined. The patient, a stroke survivor named Mr. Colling, had been stable an hour earlier. But now, he lay still, eyes wide. His lips trembled before he passed, whispering a number. 3. 1. 9. Code Blue was called, but it was already too late. That made 3 unexplained deaths in as many nights, each occurring between 3 o'clock and 3:33 a.m. Each patient whispering 3 digits. Clara wrote them down. 312. 328. Now 319. Each one started with a 3. After the chaos calmed, Clara went to the records room. The hospital kept old logs in dusty cabinets with yellowed folders. She searched by patient name, narrowing it to similar death times. The more she searched, the more connections she found. Decades apart, dozens of patients, same time frame, same pattern. Final whisper, 3 digits. Clara flipped one file and stopped cold, handwritten in red ink, 3:33. Subject terminated. Code 317. The name attached? Dr. Franklin Ashcroft. A cold shiver passed through her. That name again. She opened her journal, adding the number to the others. Then she circled one she hadn't noticed before. 333. The elevator's display from her first night. A pattern was forming. But what was the code for? That night, she had a dream or maybe a memory. She stood in the hallway of B3, the morgue walls humming softly. The air was syrup thick. The mirror outside room 9 pulsed with fog. In the glass, a shape moved. She stepped closer. A child. Can you hear us now? It asked. She woke with a start, drenched in sweat. Her phone displayed the time, 3:33 a.m. She dressed and returned to the hospital, heart hammering in her ribs. She wasn't on shift, but she had to see it. To understand. The elevator groaned as it took her down. No button press needed. Just her presence was enough. On B3, she stood before the morgue door again. 319, she whispered. The door unlocked. Inside it was no longer a morgue. It was a room of memory. The walls were papered with patient charts, some decades old. Audio tapes hummed on a loop, voices repeating numbers. The whisper codes. And in the center, a gurney. Empty. But breathing. She backed away and bumped into Jacob. I told you not to come alone. I had to know, she whispered. Jacob looked grim. Then you'd better start listening. The dead aren't trying to scare you. He turned to the wall and pointed at a patient chart. They're trying to warn you. Clara looked again. The chart bore her name. Admission date. This week. Expected time of death. 3:33 a.m. Clara stood in the dim corridor of B3, the whisper codes echoing in her mind like a song half forgotten. Jacob had left her alone again, perhaps unwilling, perhaps afraid. The air was sharp with rotten static, and every step felt like wading deeper into someone else's nightmare. She reached the end of the corridor, where the sealed chamber waited. Morgue 9. The door's rusted lock gave way when she whispered, 333. Inside, the room was cold, but not empty. A desk sat under a single flickering light, covered in reels of film and weathered notebooks. Along the back wall, surgical tools hung like silver teeth. She stepped closer. The notebook in the center was labeled Echo Phase. Subject 12 Ashcroft F. Clara flipped through pages of dense, slanted handwriting. The former doctor had scrawled theory after theory, on soul persistence, on auditory tethering, on the possibility of transferring memory into an object. One phrase repeated, "The body dies, the whisper does not." A final tape reel was already loaded in an old player. Clara pressed play. The recording crackled to life. Ashcroft's voice was calm, clinical. Test entry 94. 3:33 a.m. Subject 12 expired 30 minutes ago. Code 319 was spoken. We believe this code corresponds to a memory imprint from the final stages of cognition. We must go deeper. I have chosen to submit myself next. Static. Then something else. A breath. Then Ashcroft's voice again, whispering, terrified. I opened the door, now I wait. Clara turned to the wall and noticed something she hadn't before, a mirror. Covered by a white sheet. She pulled it down and stared into the reflection. She wasn't alone. Behind her stood a figure in a lab coat, face obscured by shadow, mouth open as if caught in the act of speaking. Do you hear me now? It rasped. She spun around. Empty room. The mirror still showed him. Clara backed out, heart racing. She shoved the tape recorder into her bag and fled up the hallway, but not before hearing the gurney behind her squeal forward just an inch. At the nurse's station, she found Jacob waiting, grim-faced. You opened the chamber? He asked. Yes, she whispered. He shook his head. Then it's begun. What is? Jacob handed her a folder. Inside were photocopies of hospital memos from 1965, internal letters warning about Ashcroft's illegal trials, his refusal to stop, and the order to close B3. No funeral was ever held. No family claimed the body. No one buried him, Jacob said, so he stayed. Clara looked down at her own name again, typed into the patient chart that hadn't yet happened. They want me, she said. No, Jacob replied. They want to be heard. Clara touched the recorder in her bag. She could end it. Or she could listen. The hospital descended into silence as the lights blinked out one by one. Clara was on the third floor when the blackout hit, an eerie mechanical sigh echoing through the vents as if the building itself had exhaled. Emergency lights flickered red. Phones failed. Monitors went dead. Her watch read 3:28 a.m. She ran down the stairwell, flashlight in hand, clutching the tape recorder like a talisman. Each step toward B3 thudded like a countdown. At the bottom, the morgue corridor was lit in pulses, emergency lights stuttering like a heartbeat. Shadows twitched across the walls. Something unseen brushed her shoulder as she stepped past Morgue 9. The gurney was gone. In the mirror room, the air was thick. Clara played the tape again. Ashcroft's voice rang out, calm, resolute. This is my reckoning. I pass now through the echo. Clara whispered the codes, 312, 328, 319, 333. The mirror pulsed. Ashcroft appeared, his eyes black voids, mouth wide. You called me. I called you to stop this, Clara said. They don't belong to you. They belong to the silence, and I keep them safe in it. No, she said. You keep them afraid. He lunged, emerging from the mirror, fractured and spectral. Clara stepped forward, raised the tape recorder, and hit record. Let them speak, she commanded. The hallway erupted in sound, dozens of voices, all whispering at once. Names, dates, memories. The codes, they weren't warnings. They were pieces. Keys to a lock. Clara shouted them again. The walls cracked, the mirror splintered, light poured from the wound in the wall. Ashcroft screamed, fractured into static. Then silence. When Clara woke, She was in the hospital chapel. The sun was rising through stained glass. Her recorder lay beside her. It was still recording. The hospital returned to normal. No more cold spots. No more whisper codes. The deaths stopped. Patients began healing. Staff began smiling. But as Clara passed a reflective window weeks later, something caught her eye. Her reflection. It blinked before she did. And in her pocket, the recorder clicked on, whispering. Code black. Memory rewritten. Clara smiled faintly. Sometimes peace comes at a price. And sometimes, silence speaks back.